Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lebenspraxis Podcast, where we explore living a life of purpose and everything that is connected to this. Okay, in my last episode number 7, I talked about many different things. One thing I talked about was to measure how often you switch tasks, or to, let's say, to have one measurement of this, which is how often you pick up your phone or unlock your phone or activate your phone, And then I made a quick tutorial on YouTube, for YouTube, where you can see how on the iPhone, how to see on the iPhone how many pickups you have. All right. Then there was a comment by my dear friend and sparring partner in means of argumentation, Sasha Fast, whom I actually have another podcast with where we are discussing matters. This is German only, but for all the German speakers, I think it's quite interesting as well. So Sasha wrote the following: I pray for the day when you come to the one and only conclusion. Smartphones are inherently toxic and should be banned from the mindful life. So, Sasha and me have an ongoing thing with this for several years. We are sort of on the same page that we both think that smartphones are an issue. Sasha has taken the more radical step. I don't want to call it radical in a sense. I will say in a moment why I don't want to call it radical, but I don't know how to else call it actually. Yeah. And I took the sort of moderate step. So I have a smartphone, I have an iPhone, and I'm using it, but I'm using it with a lot of caution. I would say Sasha's way is in a sense the easier way than my way. Although I think for many it feels, and that's a huge point, for many this feels like the more difficult way. Yeah? To not have a smartphone, it feels unthinkable for many people. And this is where this discussion here becomes very interesting, because then other people commented on Sasha's comment. And one comment was that it's quite extreme to not have a smartphone, where I think, wait a second, a moment ago there were no smartphones, like really just a moment ago. I mean, when did they appear? I think, there was this first smartphones, this Nokia communicator, I think it was called, where you could send emails with, but this was really like just for the super business people. That must be around 20 years ago, I think. Then there was the Palm. Was it called Palm? This mini computer where you could actually, I think you could not, it was not a phone. It was more mini computer sort of thing. I think it was called Palm. Then the BlackBerry came, and also some Nokias that had a bit more functions, HTC and so on. And then at some point came the iPhone. When was the first iPhone? Yeah, that must be around 15, 16 years ago, I think the first iPhone came. And from there it exploded, no? So, okay, let's say 15 years ago, this really arrived in the normal society. First with not too many functions, let's say. I don't know if there was an app store in the beginning. I don't think there was an app store. No, there was no app store. There was apps. The iPhone had some apps like a calculator, and of course you could play music, because I think the original idea of the iPhone was to have an iPod that you could also use for calls. I think this was the original idea, to merge a phone and an iPod so that you don't have to carry two devices with you. And then now 15 years later, it's an extreme thing to not have this device. Just let this sink for a moment. And let it also sink that for most people, and I'm 100% sure most of you that are listening to this will feel the same, that for most people, it would be easier to use my approach, this being very attentive of their smartphone use, compared to not having a smartphone at all. A few years ago, I was in Stockholm. I have some good friends there in Stockholm, so I have visited there a few times already. Very nice. Yeah, I love Sweden. It's a very, very nice country. It suits me very well. Everyone is very organized and nice. And there, I remember we were taking a bus and I couldn't buy a bus ticket because I did not have the smartphone app that I needed for this. So yeah, you could only buy a ticket on this bus with a smartphone app. In Berlin, you can buy a ticket in the bus. You can buy a ticket from the driver. And in my hometown, if I remember correctly, I never went with the bus much in my hometown. I think every bus station has a machine, or maybe it was also that you buy at the driver. Yeah, I'm not sure anymore. But I think in Germany this is common, that you buy either at the bus driver or the bus has a machine inside of the bus, or there's a machine outside. But there in Stockholm, where we were, there was no machine anywhere. And in the bus, you could only buy via smartphone. So what we did is that my friend that I was with, he bought with his smartphone a ticket. But when I would have been there alone, it would have been impossible for me to buy a ticket. Also, how do I know that I need to download this app and then blah, 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 put my credit card and here and this, and they're like super complicated to ride a bus, And then I was also wondering, so how do the people without a smartphone doing it? Because you cannot tell me that every person in Stockholm has a smartphone. That seemed pretty strange for me. And now in the Corona time, I think the need for smartphone has even increased, because everyone has this pass the vaccination, or that they are recovered from COVID and blah, blah, blah. That's all on the smartphone, no? And I have family members without a smartphone several actually. For them is they don't see the point, They really don't see the point. Why would I have this? They're very smart. I have very, very smart family members. They just never got interested in this. They have all computers not everyone has a computer, I think. But some of them have computers and do most of their work, if not, let's say like 80% of their work is on the computer. Writing, lots of writing and researching, but there's no need for a smartphone. They don't see any need. So what do they do in this time, where you need a smartphone? Okay, then they always have this weird piece of paper with a QR code for this Corona stuff and so on. It's funny, no? It's like there's a sort of weird solution for people that have no smartphone. Yeah, that feels somewhat like it feels somewhat like a strange thing. Like, okay, this is like a workaround, but you should usually have this in your phone. Isn't it strange? Isn't it strange how this device cut so deeply into our life in such a short matter? I mean, the computer, it took a bit longer. Obviously, computer is also everywhere now. Think about how it would be to not have a computer. I mean, I know people that don't have a computer, they only have a smartphone, but none of this, none of this because it's all computers. Smartphone, tablet, what we call a computer, so a laptop or a desktop. These are all computers. Imagine this for a moment. How would it be not to have a computer at all? There's one family member, not sure if he has a computer, but definitely he has, his interest in computers is below zero. He's already a bit older, obviously, because these people are always a bit older nowadays. And he's an artist working in the theater. He's designing stages. And he's just doing all of this, all his life he was doing this just with pens and paper. And for communication, he's calling people. Yeah, just phone calls. I think he wrote an SMS once in his life or something like this. But he lives this analog life, and I think this is something to be reminded of, that a moment ago this was normal. A moment ago a computer, I mean, you switch on the computer and then what did you do? You cleaned the house, went to shop the groceries, did a trip to France, and then at some point you came back and then the Windows 95 was switched on. So what is more extreme? Our use of the smartphone that is suddenly everywhere in our life, or not having a smartphone? And from the discussion here, I realized that maybe we need to really discuss why there is a problem with the smartphone, because I'm not sure that everyone understands it. The problem of the smartphone is the creepiness. It is the creepiness that suddenly it always appears. I don't know something, I look it up in the smartphone. Okay, I tell you one story. One is my personal story. I really love it. I love that this happened to me because it showed how dumb we are. So this was years ago, like 10 years, 11 years, like 12. Yeah, 12 years ago. But I remember it very vividly because it was so strong. So I was standing in Berlin in this one street, and I needed, I had a letter, and I needed to put it in a mailbox to send it away. Okay, so I was standing on this big street, and I thought like, wow, I have no idea where a mailbox is. So I took out my phone, my smartphone, and I think I even downloaded like an app from the German Post. Or maybe I looked on the website, but it was some effort that I put in there. Then I typed in the search, like where am I, in which street, and then it told me where's the nearest post box. Okay, so it told me this house number where the nearest post box is. I think it was 124. Okay, so I looked to the left to see which house number I am, so I know in which direction I need to go and how long it is, because there was no GPS location in this app. So I look and it says 125 or 124. Okay, I think, that's interesting. I look to my right, and 1 meter away from me, there's a mailbox. Yeah, a big yellow mailbox, not something hidden. Just a big yellow mailbox 1 meter away from me. So this was the moment where I realized, shit, if I'm not careful, I'm going to become an idiot with this device. So in this discussion here in the comment section of the videos, there's a bit of a back and forth about the advantages and disadvantages. And I found it quite interesting because none of the arguments of the advantages really gets me, to be honest. So, one listener that is writing under the pseudonym Frank Meyer is writing that the possible negative consequences of not having a smartphone, in my opinion, are your all-day life or everyday life. That it could be a lot easier, faster, and more efficient, uncomplicated, etc. with the smartphone. So one example, let's say I'm on a holiday and I want to eat something in a restaurant in the next hour. Option 1, with smartphone. I use Google to search for a good place, rely on that, and navigate myself to that place with maps. Option 2, without smartphone, I need to ask someone, if there is someone around, where a good place is, rely on that, use a map or travel guide and navigate myself with a map to that place. Conclusion, I would say option 1 is more uncomplicated, easy, fast, efficient. If this is really the end goal, of course, something what can be asked. I hope you got my point. Yeah, exactly. So, Frank Meyer said it himself here that this is something very discussable, no? Yes, if I'm somewhere or I want to get somewhere, or I'm somewhere where I don't know anything and I want to look at where's the nearest place to eat, or the nearest bookshop, or blah, 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 or the nearest mailbox, then I can look it up in the Google Maps or any other maps. Can also use other map services that don't use my data to then make me even more use the phone. And that makes life quite convenient, and easy and fast and efficient. The question is life about this? And this is not a secondary question. It's a primary question. Do I want things to be easy? If I'm on a holiday, do I just want to look things up and go there? And I'm also doing this with my phone. There's one thing I do with my phone, when I'm on a holiday and I want to eat something, I would have a look and then I compare the ratings, and then I take the one with the highest rating. But I wouldn't say this is the best thing to do. I'm not even sure if it's good to do, And because I'm cautious about this, I'm also making sure I don't do this all the time. But I do this sometimes, And other times I just see, this is the nearest place, and I try it. Because the problem is this sort of curation, I think is maybe the right word. Like, everything is working through this, through the ratings of other people, which has an advantage, obviously. Like, it tells you something. If something has a 5-star rating, 100 ratings, 5-star, it must be a good place. Compared to something that has 100 ratings and it has only 3 stars. And if these places are next to each other, then obviously it makes sense to go to the better place. And I think this is also a democratic tool. Because if you don't have this, someone that is doing shitty work is staying in business for longer. And we could say, hey, actually that's fair. Someone that is putting more effort, that is doing better work, gets rated on all these 10 million rating things. And I think Google is maybe the most important when it comes to something like restaurants. The person that puts more effort does a better job and gets rated better. He is therefore also, this is also publicly shown, yeah, is there's a lot of skin in the game. You cannot have a bad mood in that sense nowadays, because the customer will directly make a 1-star review. Yeah, and sometimes if you read these reviews, there's these reviews of, I really like this place, I really love it, but today they were a bit, had not a good mood, so I just give 1 star. Or something like this, yeah? So people can be very merciless with this rating things. They don't like one thing that they don't like, and directly gets rated much less. There is a danger in this, I would say. But I would also say that, yeah, there is this I like somehow. Like I sort of dislike it. I like that nowadays everyone can freely give their opinion on everything. Seems a bit dangerous for me, because there's a lot of junk opinions, yeah, of people that this is what I talked about. Okay, yeah, I really liked it, but the wine was a bit too cold, 2 degrees too cold, so I give only 2 stars. Yeah, this sort of shit thing, which is also not fair. But as I said, what I like about it is that people have skin in the game with their businesses. The thing is that if I always look up everything and navigate somewhere with Google Maps and blah, 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 then I will not get lost. I will not find things, by accident. And this is a big part, can be a big part of life. You walk somewhere in a new place, you make a holiday, and you just go out of the place where you stay, and then you find a restaurant or a bookshop, and then you take a risk and you go in there and you see how it is. That's the thing, it takes the risk out. All of this, it takes the risk out, and that's a problem. My grandfather, he told me when they were going somewhere, I mean, you couldn't go far in socialist Germany, at least not to the west. You couldn't go so far, but I mean, far enough. Yeah, obviously there was no GPS and so on. So he told me how he unrolled the maps, on his desk and looked exactly, okay, where does he need to go, to the left, to the right, and how many meters. And he was in the military, so he's a super accurate person. Yeah, I'm like a complete unorganized mess compared to him. And then he learned everything by heart, so he didn't need the maps anymore. And then he was driving there. Yeah, so there was some skill involved. I did also 1 year completely without GPS, driving quite a bit in this year. In Berlin, obviously a lot, and Berlin is not a small city, so you regularly go to places. If you don't always go to new place, to the place that you know, but if you go to new places in Berlin, then you need to have a good map in your head or have a good physical map. And I went also to other countries, actually, something that used to be super normal. And when I was going the first times I was going to France with the car, and the first times I was not driving, I was on the passenger seat, but there was already GPS, but there was no internet in a foreign country, not like now, yeah, where in the European Union everywhere you have internet for free. There it was not the case. So the moment you pass the border, no GPS anymore. Yeah, then it was blank. Then you needed to have the maps again. It was an adventure. Definitely, it was quite an interesting adventure to go through France. But this risk is taken out of the lives through the smartphone. So is this something good or is this something bad? Unclear. And that's why you have to be a bit cautious. And that's just one of the examples. That something makes things easier doesn't mean that this is necessarily good, because life is not about making it more convenient or more easy or less risky. Every time you do this, you're taking something out. And with something like the GPS is very clearly what you take out. You take out not just the risk, but also your ability to navigate. If you are driving in Berlin without a GPS and maybe even without a map, you develop a very good internal map of Berlin, and the sections in your brain that are used for navigation will be used more, will be stronger. And there is evidence that these regions in, for example, taxi drivers in London that need to know like the whole city by heart, that these regions are very developed and very strong. And when they stop working as taxi drivers, then these regions become weaker because they don't use this map anymore. Yeah. So the skills that you use, they have a physical change in your brain also. So always when you take something out, always when you say, I'm not doing this anymore, I let the machine do this, you also take something away from yourself. Your ableness in this, at least in this regard, gets weaker. But it can obviously also mean, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, but I'm using the time to do something else. Yeah, I'm using my brain for something else. Why not? Yeah, why not? But be cautious. Only because it's more convenient doesn't mean it's something better. You need to contemplate about it. What is happening here? Do I want this? Then the listener that runs under the pseudonym Music for Body and Soul is writing the following thing. I think the best way to deal with smartphones isn't to completely ban them from your life, but to find a balanced way living with it. It's always about balance in life, in my opinion. Sure, you could also ban sweets and fast food from your life to live healthier, but if you really like this kind of food and it gives you enjoyable moments in life, I think it's totally okay to consume this from time to time. Same with smartphone usage. If you control your consume, it should be fine. Yes, but okay, let's see what is happening or what is balance. Does balance mean that we need to have everything in our life and balance this? What is the balance that we want to achieve? What does it mean, balance? Like really for our lives. Yeah, because if I'm now extremist about this example, like, yeah, I don't want to ban something completely out of my life. I want to have a balance. Okay, then if I'm now as a balance extremist would say, yeah, from time to time I punch someone in the face, or from time to time I do a robbery, yeah. Or from time to time I shit on the street, and so on. That would be like the extreme. I don't ban anything from my life because life is about balance. Yeah, I'm very extrapolating here. Obviously, I just want to make the point that maybe balance doesn't necessarily mean that you need to keep something in your life. If you feel this has no place, then it has no place. This is one thing, but there's another thing. This balanced approach is not suitable for everyone. Yeah? Because it might be too hard to control. That's the thing. If you make a clear decision and say, I'm not doing this, or I'm the person that is doing this, it might not be super balanced in that way, you could say, but it makes things more clear. And clarity is a very powerful thing to have in life. For example, I never drink any alcohol. For me, that's very clear. There's no way in my life will I drink a sip of alcohol. Yeah, obviously, taking out things where it's I didn't know or something like this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm not feeling bad then or something like this. But consciously, I will never drink alcohol. I decided this. And this is 100%. So now you could say, that's a bit extreme, and isn't it more balanced to also drink sometimes with friends and so on and so forth. But why should I do this? I don't care about alcohol. I think alcohol has zero advantages for my life. So why would I do this? Because it's a social thing? I don't need to do it because it's a social thing, you know? I can have a good time with my friends without this substance. I just see zero need for that. And it sounds extreme, and extreme is the opposite of balanced. But I think it brings a lot of clarity to my life, and it doesn't imbalance myself in any way of the balance that I'm searching for. Because the balance that I search for in my life is not about, drinking a bit of alcohol and eating a bit of chocolate and so on and so forth. Yeah? That's not the balance that I'm searching for in life. So I understand the argument, and I think it's a good argument to say, okay, we don't always have to go extreme and ban things and so on. But I also say it makes things clearer. And at the same time, it's a temperament, not maybe a temperament thing, but what is it, personality thing or whatever. Just some people deal better with having something in their life that is can be potentially overdone. Yeah, like this example here with fast food and sweets that are potentially addictive. Some people can deal better with this, and they just eat a bit of chocolate, fast food once a month, and that's fine, you know. And for others, they, if they do it once, they cannot stop anymore. One friend of mine, for example, told me he just stopped eating meat completely because for him it's very important the animal rights, that when he eats meat, it needs to be at least from organic farms. But he knows that when he's eating meat, then he just felt it's hard for him to do this, to make this decision, you know. Then he will stand somewhere at the fast food, and then he will order something with meat. So he has noticed this in himself. So he just made this clear decision. No, I don't want to eat meat from bad sources. So I will not eat meat at all because it makes things more clear. And with the smartphone is the same. And that's why I said I think Sasha's way is maybe, in a sense, the easier way. Yeah, because he just says, no, I have no smartphone, and that's it. Case solved. Whereas my case, and the case for many of you, is much more complex. It's about how often do I use the smartphone, how much, and which apps do I allow, and blah, 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 blah. And this is also what Sasha mentioned to me many times. Josef, if it takes you so much thinking about how to use this device properly, it shows very clearly that it's a bad device. And I completely agree with him. And now you might think, so Josef, why do you have a smartphone? And it's simply because I see the advantages of the smartphone. I don't think I need a smartphone. And I think my smartphone usage is most of the time, not 100%, but 95% of the days of my life in a way that I feel very good with it. So something to think about is, what are you using the smartphone for? And are you using it for good causes? And is a smartphone really needed for this? So Music for Body and Soul made another comment where he's addressing exactly this topic, and I will read it here. Because I was writing that, what was I was writing? Yeah, something about what I was just talking about. And then Music for Body and Soul answered, I'd say it depends on many factors. If it has possible negative consequences, for example, on age and social cultural environment, I think it makes a huge difference to don't use a smartphone as a teenager if all of your social environment does so. But to not use it as a 30-year-old adult with friends who also don't use it should be quite easy. Also, if you don't need it to work. I find this case or this example very important, because the point that Music for Body and Soul makes here, that you should have a smartphone so you're not left out from or taken out of society in this way. But the comment continues talking about this, so let's continue. I can imagine that it's uncool to not use a smartphone nowadays as a teenager. Otherwise, it can be cool to do so as an adult. So possible negative consequences could be in young age that one is excluded, maybe even mobbed. On the other hand, it could be that you need a smartphone as an adult for your work. You work with Instagram as a business tool, you need to answer calls with it, you drive to clients, get navigated, etc. So this would mean that you could not practice some professions at all without a smartphone. Especially for emergencies, smartphones can be a life-saving tool nowadays. Find the next hospital, call an ambulance quick, having your vaccination certificate, organic donor card, etc. ready to hand. I'd say that it's nowadays quite unusual to not use a smartphone without evaluating it. I can imagine sociologists would argue that it's nowadays the new hegemonial cultural way of living a modern life. The holding cultural hegemony, the culture that is dominant at this particular time in our Western particular area. Yeah, okay. So let's come back to the point of being uncool because you're a teenager and not have a smartphone. And I give an example of my own life again. When I was 8, 9, 10, something like this, our TV broke. Our TV broke. We couldn't switch it on anymore. And then we had a family meeting about our TV where we were talking about if we should repair the TV. Yeah, it was not that, the TV is broken, we need to repair it or we need to buy a new TV. We did a family meeting. And then democratically, we were deciding if we want to repair the TV. Me and my sister were asked about our opinion. We both said no. We don't need the TV to be repaired. Weird, no? Now that I think about it, because we were watching regularly TV, but we just said no. We don't need that. We don't need the TV. And there was no, my mother didn't bring us there, She was really just asking us if we want to have it repaired, yes or no. And we said no. What happened? From this time on, in recess in school, I had a hard time talking with the other ones in my class, or at least with the ones that I would usually talk with, because they were always talking about what they watched in TV the day before. Yeah. It was no problem for me. I felt okay, I cannot talk about this. I don't care. I don't want to talk about TV. And then when I was around, I think it was that people were talking, when I was 8, there was not so much talk about TV. But when I was like 14, 15, there was a lot that they were talking about what they watched on TV the day before. And this is the time when I started to use the recess to do my training. I did push-ups, I did squats and blah, 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 blah. I did things. I took care of myself. Yeah, there was no problem. I was also not mobbed, but yeah, I was never a person that would have been mobbed in school, and I was also not in a school where people have been mobbed. I mean, yes, 1 or 2, yes, but I was on a more gentle school, definitely. On my school, there was also not this thing that we heard about other schools where kids get mobbed because they don't have their Adidas clothes or something like this. This was unthinkable in my school. Yeah, I mean, most of the time I was barefoot with karate pants, super uncool, you could say. Never this would have been a problem in my school. Like, no one said anything about this. It was just, everyone could dress however they wanted in that way. So, for me, if I'm a teenager and I feel I need to get a smartphone because otherwise I'm mobbed by the other kids, that's tricky. That's a tricky life to live. The strong thing is obvious. Don't get it. Don't get the smartphone. And don't give a fuck about what the other dumb teenagers say. Yeah? If they need a smartphone, okay. I don't say it's wrong to have a smartphone as a teenager. Yeah? I don't say this. It's not wrong to have a smartphone as a teenager. But there should not be, because otherwise I'm uncool or something like this. Smartphone is a tool. It's not about being cool or not, or being not cool. It is a tool. It's like a hammer. Just that the smartphone is many tools at the same time. And that's what makes it complicated. That's where it's not like a hammer. But it's like a full garage of tools, basically. Let me go to the second point and have a look if it's actually true that you need a smartphone for work. Obviously, there are works where you need a smartphone, but let's look at the points here. So if I want to drive somewhere and I'm driving to clients a lot, then actually many cars have GPS. Yeah, many modern cars have a GPS built in. So, and if I know, okay, I don't have a smartphone, then I get a car with a GPS built in. That doesn't sound like a problem to me. I don't need a smartphone for this. If I have a car without a GPS, I can get an extra GPS for my car. Yeah, like the family members, my family members that don't have a smartphone have exactly this. They don't have GPS in their cars built in. They bought a GPS that they plug into the car, and then they have a GPS in the car. Yeah. Okay, so debunked. If you work with Instagram as a business tool, actually you also don't need a smartphone. And you know what? I don't have Instagram on my smartphone, and I have an Instagram channel. I manage my Instagram through a tool called Later. I have talked about this a few times before. I'm using Instagram as a creator, not as a user. I don't use Instagram myself, and I also advise people not to use it. The reason why I am there on Instagram posting things is because people are there. Yeah, and let's say there is a garden where things are growing. I don't spend time in this garden myself, but I still hang my things there. Yeah, and saying, hey, I'm doing my stuff, and so on and so forth. Okay? I think something like this podcast, this is the much better way. This is the much better way to share these things. This is a much more calmer environment. Also, my newsletter, email newsletter. Yeah. But people are on Instagram, so I post there. I'm just not using it myself really as a user. I mean, once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm there for a moment, then I get super bored in 5 minutes and then that's it. Like, I really don't get it how people can spend a long time there, because there's just, Instagram is a bunch of fragments. It doesn't go deep. I want depth in my life. I want to really explore things. I want books. I want longer things. Even podcasts for me are usually too short. Yeah. I like to go into things that are 5 hours, 6 hours, and also 40 hours long. Yeah. And go deeply into the things. Okay. So to manage an Instagram account, you don't really need a smartphone. I mean, there are moments where you need a smartphone. Indeed, the tool that I use later, it cannot do everything through the browser on the phone, but I could actually decide not to do the things that it cannot do and be fine with Instagram. So it's not needed, but I agree. There are things, if you manage an Instagram account, where you would need your smartphone. But to say this, if my work is to manage an Instagram account, then you could say, okay, I can have a work smartphone, and this work smartphone is in my office, yeah, and I'm using it there for work to manage the Instagram account, and then after I switch it off and I leave it there. You need to answer calls with it. This you can also do with a normal phone. You don't need a smartphone for this. By the way, Sasha never said he doesn't have a phone. Yeah, he has a phone. He has a phone. We had also a phone call once, I remember. Although we usually communicate on something like Zoom, but he has a phone. Yeah, like every person. Every person has a phone. He also has a phone. I met also people that don't have a phone actually, but he has a phone. Yeah, so he can answer calls. He can also call the ambulance quick. Also something where you don't need a smartphone for. Yeah. So, and with the vaccination certificate, you don't need a smartphone. Organ donor card, you don't need a smartphone. This can be all done without a smartphone. I think the moments where my family members feel like now they need a smartphone, like they cannot solve the situation without a smartphone now, smartphone would significantly make this moment in their life better. I think this is zero. I think they never feel this. They really never feel this moment. Yeah. So guys, the point that I want to make is don't be too apologetic about smartphones. Yeah. Smartphones can do many things. And what I would recommend is an exercise. I talk about it in a moment, but it can do many things, but you don't need to have a smartphone. Realize this. And you will realize it through the following exercise. You become aware of what you use the smartphone for. You can just take your smartphone out, and look, like, what apps do you have? Which apps do you regularly use, and why, and what for, and how often, and so on and so forth. And then you can just always look, is there an alternative? Could you do this without a smartphone? For example, making pictures. You can also do this with a camera. With a camera, actually, you can take better pictures. Like, I have a recent iPhone, like the best of the best, yeah, phone I have that's on the market, camera-wise. The phone doesn't make better pictures than my camera that I have. Definitely not. My camera makes better pictures. And I don't have a 5,000 euro camera. Yeah, my camera makes better pictures. Full stop. Boom. Calls, we already talked about. Instagram, there is some point here. Then the question is, do you need Instagram in your life? Yes or no? This is also something to consider. Yeah, probably everyone will find out, no, Instagram is not needed. It's not vital for my life. Maybe for my business, it's an important thing, but businesses can also work without Instagram. Yeah, definitely. Depending on the business, Instagram can be completely unimportant, or Instagram can be more important. So for everything that is more visual, Instagram would be more important. Yeah, probably like artistic things or also all this movement stuff is a lot of on Instagram because it's very visual. Other things like more writing endeavors, they don't happen so much on Instagram. They happen more on Twitter, where you definitely don't need a smartphone for. Twitter is also shit, yeah? Twitter is I think Twitter is more terrible than Instagram, by the way. Twitter is actually so terrible that it's almost, I think, as terrible as TikTok. And I've never been on TikTok in my life, so I actually have no idea how it is. But from all what I heard, it sounds super terrible. Another point would be, for example, listening to music. But there is also actually old-fashioned MP3 players. This stuff also still exists. Then there is another question. Do you always need to listen to music everywhere where you go? Yeah, is that vital in your life? I listen a lot to audiobooks, but I could also actually do this on my computer. In a sense, I couldn't do that with my computer when I walk. So for this would be maybe old-fashioned MP3 players. Then there's the question, is this vital for me to walk around listening to audiobooks and so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. Another thing that I do with my smartphone, why I like to have it, is that I take notes on it quite regularly. This is the reason for most of my activations of my phone, is to take notes. Yeah, so the biggest use for me of using my phone is audiobooks, listening to audiobooks, and taking notes. I think afterwards would come probably communication with other people through messaging or phone, and then taking videos, pictures, something like this. Okay, so I have a smartphone. I'm really not dependent on it. So when there was this discussion coming yesterday, then I was thinking, okay, yeah, interesting, this discussion. And I was thinking, what would happen? Would it be difficult for me to not have my smartphone? Or for example, to lock my smartphone away for 1 month? And I felt no difficulty about it. I felt no anxiety, nothing. The only thing that I felt is like, oh, it's a bit annoying then to tell everyone that I will not be on Signal for 1 month. So I would need to figure out whom do I message, that it's clear that if they want to contact me, they need to do so via mail or call me, because I only have a dumb phone for this time being, and so on and so forth. That was the only thing where I felt like, oh, okay, that would be a bit annoying. But besides that, I really felt like no problem at all for me to not have this phone. And I hope for you it's similar. Yeah, because I think like this, you can use your phone healthy if you're really not dependent on it. Don't be dependent on it. Realize when it creeps into your life and get disgusted by it. Yeah, don't let it creep in. Yes, suddenly, just look at this, blah, blah, blah. Especially for the ones of you that have kids. I have 2 kids, as you know. I say it regularly. And for me, the phone is really, should not be present there. Yeah, my kids, of course, know that there is phones, that there are smartphones, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, also we use it sometimes so they can listen to an audio of something or to music and so on when we are in the car or blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they know these devices. We don't hide them from them. But actually, I leave all my devices, my laptop, my tablet that I like to use for work, also my smartphone. I just leave it in my office. So it's not at home at all. And basically, after I finish work, usually my use of digital is super reduced. Yeah, there are days where then I like to maybe read something on a screen because, for some reason I decided to, there's some books I read on a tablet and not physically. Sometimes this, sometimes that. I read more physically, but I read a bit digitally as well. Yeah, so sometimes it can be then on some afternoons a screen can be still in my life. But in general, for me, the end of my workday also means screens are basically not present anymore in my life. Okay, and now notice one important thing. One important data point, I would say. Every time I talk about smartphones, and I have done a few times during the years, this gets a lot of attention. Because people know there is a problem with these things. They know it. Yeah. No parent is asking themselves if their kids are playing too much Lego. Yeah. Or if their kids are climbing too much on trees. But everyone that has more than 2 brain cells working properly is monitoring very strictly how much screen time their kid has. Because we know there is something that can be problematic with that. Yeah? This is a very, very double-edged sword, the screens. And the smartphone is the screen that you can always have with you everywhere. That's the sneaky thing. That's why a desktop computer is less problematic. You can also get lost on a desktop computer. Definitely, you can get super lost. So the computer, in a sense, would be the next thing to talk about, yeah, or the tablet and then computer. Like the more clunky they are, the less mobile they are, the less problematic they are in this sense, because they cannot creep themselves in so easily. If I'm out in the park, my desktop computer is not there, but my smartphone is there. And that's the problem. It's always there. So what can you do? Leave it at home. And when you feel you cannot leave your home without a smartphone, also a problem. You have a problem. Yeah? Can be a problem of organization. I can only organize my life on the go if I have a smartphone. Obviously, I don't mean that is a problem if sometimes you need it or most of the time you need it. But if you cannot go out at all without a smartphone, that's a problem. So if you take your walks, around your home, afternoon walks, or go to a friend, blah, 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 go without it. Just leave it at home. Nothing bad will happen. Yeah, it's highly unlikely that exactly at this point you need your smartphone, and it can happen. I go out with the smartphone regularly, and there are moments when I think, oh yeah, now I would like to write something down. I don't have a pen and paper. I don't have my smartphone with me. Yeah, okay, and I keep it in my head. Or, oh, this is such a beautiful sight. Yeah, I would like to do a picture and blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Yeah. You don't always have all your tools ready. And you don't need to have all the tools always with you. Yeah, it's okay. There would be an opportunity here to do this and this, but no, not now. It's okay. Take some risk. Go out without the smartphone. Super risky life. Yeah, extreme. And through this, then investigate. Do you want to have a smartphone? What does the smartphone do with your life? How do you use it? Blah, 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 blah. Or do Sasha's approach, the easy way out. Sounds a bit degrading the way, but no, it's the easier way out. Just decide, okay, I don't actually need a smartphone. Or the other way is, okay, I have a smartphone, I don't care about it, I use it just super occasionally or only in certain places. That's another thing. Yeah, like I say, okay, very often I don't have my smartphone in my home. Yeah. So when I'm at home, there's no screen, there's no smartphone. But when I'm, in my office, then I will use it, for example. Yeah. Although in my office, I'm also not really using it because then I'm working on the computer, on the tablet, and I'm working very concentrated, and the smartphone just would disturb there. Okay, my voice is a bit leaving me now. Guys, thank you very much for your comments. Yeah, thank you to Frank Meyer. Thank you to Music for Body and Soul. Thank you to Sasha. Because this is, as I said a few times already, this is the nutrition this podcast is feeding on. Yeah. Please feel very invited to continue to comment. So there is discussion, and I find it very, very great that people comment there. I know it's always also an act of bravery, of courage to publicly post in the internet, even if you're under a pseudonym. It takes some courage. I know it from myself. Yeah, all this publication that I do, it always feels a bit like a courageous act. Oh wow, I'm publishing this. Yeah, and you guys that write the comments here, you definitely have my respect. Very nice that we can discuss things and that you're open for this. And thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, guys. This was the end of today's episode. Feel free to send me an email if you have thoughts or comment on the YouTube version of the podcast. You can send me any questions, any comments that you have, any suggestions for episodes to come. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, there you can also rate the podcast. That also helps to show that this is legit for other people to listen to. And of course, feel free to send it to someone. As I think this smartphone episode, it's highly likely you know someone where you feel like he should listen to this. So send it to him. Probably will create some nice discussion. All right, here's a postscriptum after I slept one night and had a few more thoughts. And I want to make the key point more clear, which is, why is this actually a thing for people like me and Sasha? And the point here is that people like me and Sasha, we are on a mission. We want to do something. We are creating. We are putting something there. And for us, it is disturbing to have things in our life that steer us off our path, because we are on a path, we are on a journey, we're doing our things. And something like the smartphone is potentially dangerous for the path because of the creepiness that it has, like I said before. And I think some of you for some of you, will be very easy to relate to this, to say, yes, it's true. Yes, I also have my thing and I don't want to be interrupted by the phone in it. It makes me feel bad, or whatever emotion you want to put. And maybe for some others of you, it's let's say emotionally a bit more difficult to relate to. But one of the things that I am talking about and that is important for me is the seriousness of your existence. And to see yourself as a gift to the world, and to use that to give and to create. And if you're in this mode of being in this approach, then it will, I think, automatically create a carefulness about your interactions with items and other things. And if they are a good part in your journey, or an ambiguous part, or a not welcome part. All right.